Hey guys, it is time to review Wizard Symphony with the usual topics, story, gameplay, graphics and music. But before that, why do I say that most likely you'll never play this game? Wizard's Harmony is a saga of games developed by Arc. Probably you know them because they got the rights for Double Dragon and because they also work on Guilty Gear. The thing with Wizard's Harmony is that they were developed since 1995 until 1998, with a port for the PSP in 2008. But they never left Japan. Not that you need to play the previous games to get this one, but the thing is that most likely this one is not going to leave Japan either. But if language is not an issue for you, it wasn't hard to get my hands on one copy. And without further ado, Wizard Symphony begins presenting some scenes from 1000 years ago, where a character on the background discusses about the critical levels of magic power this orb is reaching. Orb able to disappear the whole country. Then another person comes into scene, Tenar, who was supposed to escape. However, Tenar argues that he's not able to abandon his brother, as he thinks that with his harmonics he will be able to help. Nonetheless, seems like it wasn't possible, letting the viewer know that Tenar wasn't able to do something about this incident. Whatever happened, those were moments of war. But now these are peaceful times. And as people love to uncover things from ancient times, the era of adventurers began with the so-called conductors, those who traverse these ruins using skills or magic. Here's where we get to know two of our main characters in the story, Alto and Spica, two conductors or adventurers that work in the city of Kazan, oftentimes helping with some of the most trivial tasks, as saving cats. With that said, I'm sure most of you know where this story is pointing to, and effectively, that is what happens here, as Alto, Spica, Merak, and Eric adventure into one of these dungeons in search of a cat, while also agreeing with Eric to help him reach the lower floors, where Alto and company found the cat they were looking for, but also a girl trapped in some sort of device, where Alto gets a flashback. Little after that, a group of people appears, telling our adventurers to stay away from the golem, and with this, we could say that our adventure begins, as this golem, or Aster, is able to locate artifacts that have special powers. So now it's up to our group of adventurers to save the day. So what is the deal with this story? If there is a kind of feeling, or full expression of what a JRPG is, Wizard Symphony is what I will say the most classic approach. It has fanservice, lots of silly moments, and twists to spice the adventure. But in general, we are going to follow these adventurers unraveling the secrets of this place, the whole deal of harmonics while in combat, and the tragic events that happened 1000 years ago. For the most part, I will say that it was a really enjoyable story, where the characters' background are explained in some sub-quest, and boy, plenty of these moments were so funny, and also many others took a much more mature approach on certain events. However, for the most part, the tone in this game is kept somewhere around the same levels, tending into the silly territory. With that, I would say that its story is a 7.5. I believe it was entertaining enough, but it certainly lacked in some areas to keep a better flow. Worth mentioning that this game is fully voice acted, so for those who get Japanese, you will get a lot of random discussions between characters. Gameplay-wise, as easily seen, it is a first-person dungeon crawler or DRPG, where we traverse different areas as we progress in the game. And one of the biggest points to highlight is that the level design of Wizard Symphony was something I enjoy a lot, because oftentimes dungeon crawlers are all about going up and down on different floors, but here there were multiple executions, some of them with that classic approach, but some maps were connected in quite interesting ways, left and right. And few times I see the need to actually connect the dots between multiple areas, but here I found myself going on an old school approach, making my own maps, as getting lost in some levels is quite easy, but it was an experience I had a lot of fun with, as it actually felt like you were traversing a dungeon, which can be quite complex on its own. Those, for example, were some of the notes I made while completing this game. While it wasn't needed on every level, in 4 of them I created these maps. Other dungeons down the line have a much more classic approach, and the thing is that the autopilot doesn't find the shortest route if there are traps. Another interesting thing is that there are plenty of areas that have interesting puzzles, some of them literally marked on the map, So going between normal puzzles and some others that require specific inputs found on creative ways was interesting as heck. Once on these fights, each character has a particular role. For example, Alto is a bit of a jack of all trades, having some magics, physical attacks, debuffs and other skills while traversing the dungeon. Spica is the tank of the team. Merak is your usual mage having access to the 4 elements. Aster is a physical character with lots of damage, and like that, your other companions have specific skills to balance the journey. What's worth mentioning is that this game has so many little mechanics, depending from the character we're using, that it becomes quite interesting to synergize your whole team, where it is also important to make, let's say, strong relationships between them. That way they can assist using skills or magics in the same turn. In general, I would say that the adventure was balanced. There were but a couple of moments where I had to farm, increase like 2 or 3 levels, which doesn't take that much time, but once I finished the library, I never saw myself farming anymore. However, it isn't that bad, because every item you find here helps you in multiple ways, and it is part of the usual grindy but entertaining sessions presented in this subgenre. Monsters have the chance to drop some gems or remnants. The gems in this game are used to enhance your equipment, where as you level it up, you unlock remnant slots, where you can also allocate specific passive skills, like extra HP, magic points, resistance to sleep, confusion and so on. The same with offensive skills or magics, and you can also use these gems to create remnants. Now, combine these with the extra skills that you learn while leveling up and you have a rich level of customization, where down the line it is important to specialize your companions, to refine their attributes, otherwise most likely some battles may turn problematic. As for subquests, I ended up doing most of them, but they definitely needed some more love, as sometimes they are the classic go and gather some items and that's it, or talk to person A then B, reach an area of the dungeon and that's it. In general they were not interesting at all, aside from subjugation quest. But on this side of the subquest, it is where you can find more about your companions. And while the game doesn't force you to do any of them, after you complete them, you get their special moves. To me this game would be a perfect starting point into dungeon crawlers, as far as its gameplay goes, because it has a nice level design, with interesting mechanics. I would give it an 8. In the graphics section I usually check game performance, glitches, creativity and other technical things. However, in this case there isn't that much to say on the technical side, as it never froze or had drops while playing, so all good here. But I cannot say the same when we start to check enemies or some dungeons, as they are a bit too repetitive. Unfortunately, we can add this game with plenty of others where they repaint enemies to no end, which unfortunately diminish the experience in the long run, as you will see the same sprites a good chunk of time. However, somewhere around the 7th dungeon, they added some creative designs, where I was actually amazed. I mean, I had no idea I would see some bizarre things, considering that for the most part they have that charming look. So at least I gotta say that the last part of Wizard Symphony was enjoyable once again. As for the animations in combat, most of them were of my liking, as they have some interesting effects. But it is also fair to say that some of these were a bit funny, like the most basic fire attack, as it looks like they have done the effect in real life and then inserted it while attacking, so it looks a bit out of place. But aside from that, like 90% of the animations are quite nice, with also an interesting anime design. To me, this section gets a 7.5, truth being told, while there are some so-so executions, there are also many others quite interesting. However, for the most part you will see the so-so side, until you are reaching late chapters. And last but not least, it's music. One of the composers is Hajime Asano. I am almost sure it is not the same person from Mayuchiki. No idea here, to be honest. I didn't find photos or something to check if they are the same person. In any case, this Hajime seems like has worked on Wizards Harmony 1 and 2, not to be confused with Harmony Wizard, Evergreen Avenue, and some Guilty Gear stuff. Now, in all honesty, I don't know under which category this kind of soundtrack could be allocated, as it sounds kinda wacky, in the good sense. It reminds me a lot to the music I would hear in cartoons from the 90s,
which oftentimes take inspiration from either Baroque or classic executions, with an extra dash of notes here and there. It was quite the experience because I don't find these kinds of pieces that often. However, I cannot really say that they were of my liking. There is a good level of composition that sits well for the game, but it isn't something I would hear on a regular day. To me, it is a 7. It is not bad, but also it isn't that good, or memorable aside from its peculiar nature. It is an okay soundtrack. Wizard Symphony final score is a 7.5. If it were found on another language, sure, I would recommend to play it as it was a balanced journey for a DRPG, which oftentimes make you sweat at least one bucket. And perhaps its other thing to consider is that it has some of the most classic Japanese approaches. They don't bother me, but I commend them as sometimes they don't sit that well on this side of the lake. But aside from that, I had fun while playing this game. And if you wanna play something not that orthodox, yep, I do recommend it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.